Alright, so in today's tutorial, we're going to be tackling this animation right here. Now, you can get this project file in the description for $1. You can go and grab that. Everybody on Patreon, you'll be getting this project file for free. If you don't know about the Patreon, everyone gets access to these project files right here very early in advance. It usually takes me about a week or more to actually get to the tutorial, but people get these project files very early, as well as there's exclusive tutorials. I just released one today about how to make this really cool color rim effect, so you can go check that out, plus tons of other exclusive tutorials, assets, things like that. That being said, let's get into the tutorial. All right, so we're just going to go up to the file, and we're going to make a new file here. Now, we have this. Delete everything out of your scene, and we're going to hit Shift-A. We're going to add a plane, and we're going to hit S8 to scale it all the way up. Now we're going to hit Shift-A, and we're going to be adding an empty plane axis. So we're going to be using that empty in the mirror modifier that we're going to add. So go to the modifiers, add in mirror, right here on mirror object, click that empty, and go from X to Z. Right there. Now, if we take our plane here and we go to the move tool and we just move it up, you have your mirrored object. So we're actually going to make this pretty tight, so we'll put it right around there. Now let's go ahead and add in our camera. So we're going to hit Shift-A, add in a camera right here. Let's add that camera. Now let's hit Control so we can get this camera to snap to the grid. So grid, right there, and snap it to the edge of your scene. We want it to be here on 8. We want it to be here on 8 because we scaled the plane by 8. We want the camera to be moved to the 8 so we can make this loop seamlessly. Now let's go ahead and rotate our camera 90 degrees, 0. We're going to give this 180. Actually, let's give it 90 so it points right in there. And let's go ahead and start shading. So first off, in my camera settings, I'm going to go and make it pretty wide angle. So we're going to go about to maybe 24 millimeter, which simulates a 24 millimeter lens. So now let's go to the shading tab here. So I'm going to go ahead and close out these windows right here. So now we have this. We need to go over here to this camera icon, switch it over to the Eevee render engine, turn on bloom and ambient occlusion. So let's hit Z and go to rendered. You're only going to see gray because your world setting is at gray. Now let's go to the color and bring that world setting all the way down to black. Now click on the plane, click new. Let's go ahead and delete that default. We're going to hit Shift-A and type in mix. We're going to be using the mix shader here. Plug this into the surface. And we'll go ahead and add in an emission shader right here. Plug that right here into the shader. And let's get in a transparent node right here, transparent BSDF. And we'll plug that here. Now we need to make sure that this transparent node is active. So we go to the shading tab here. Right here on blend mode, we're going to change it to alpha clip. So it makes everything black. Let's go ahead and use this factor here to tell it how to react, making that blocky shading. So Shift-A, add in a color ramp so we can squash everything that's going to go behind it. So plug the color into the factor. Now we're going to use the node that's really going to drive how this whole thing's going to look, which is a brick texture. Now we're going to use this brick texture, plug the color into the color ramp, and we're going to see some stuff happening right here. Now, I don't like where the brightness is happening. It's happening outside of the bricks, not inside. So what we'll do is we'll just swap these two right here. Now the bricks are the parts that are active in the lighting. Now, if you have the Node Wrangler add-on enabled, comes default, hit Control-T, and then we're going to use this object coordinate, plug it into the vector, and now we have this. So now we can start playing with the scale, things like that. So bringing up the scale, make it look really cool. Now bring your mortar smoothness all the way down to 0, and you can play with your mortar size like that. And then it's kind of cool right now, but I'm not a huge fan of it. I want it to look a little more techy. So we're going to go to the texture coordinate here, and we're going to add in a Voronoi. We're going to add that right there. And so right now it's doing that. We don't really like that look. So I'm going to hit Shift-A, add in a mix shader. A mix RGB, so we can show it how much of that shader to use. So bring the object coordinate into that color right there. Then we do that, we kind of have those bricks coming back. So if you use this factor, it brings it back to how it used to look. So if we use this factor, we can just bring it over a little bit and it starts to affect it. Now these default settings in the Voronoi, I want to change it up a little bit. Let's go from 3D to 4D so we get this W right here, which just kind of adds some randomness. And then from Illucidian, let's try Chevychev. So we can play with that until we get some stuff that we like, maybe Manhattan. These two are the ones that I find to have the coolest results. Now let's go ahead and go back to the brick texture, and let's bring squash up to get some really cool results there. Maybe bring that scale up more, and then bring the mortar size down some so we get some different results. And you can go in and play with it and do it whatever you want, however you like it to look. and you get these really cool blocks. Now let's go ahead and start shading it more, adding some color. So right here on the emission, we're going to bring it down here. We're going to take a color ramp and Shift D, duplicate it. Right down here, we're going to pick the 2 colors that we want to play with here in our scene. So I'm going to go bring this all the way up. I'm going to give it a sort of orangey red, and we're going to make this a nice blue. Now to activate that, right now they're just mixing. We're going to use the color socket right here, plug it right here into the color ramp, just like that. Now they're starting to work a little bit. Let's go ahead, right here on linear, change it to constant so we get a more hard edge so that they're sort of being displaced a little bit better, and then we can bring that strength up. So now I'm going to go ahead and just sort of play around with these blocks a little bit how I like. All right, now this is pretty cool, but I want to have some more scale into the scene. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit this plane here, Shift D, and then what I'm going to do, I'm going to go back to layout, go to rendered view, and I'm going to take it and scale it up huge, way up here. And then on those, what I'm going to do, here in the shading tab, I'm going to highlight everything except for the material output, hit Control C. Now make sure you have this top plane selected. We're going to delete that, make a new one, delete this default, and then hit Control V to paste everything back in there. I'm going to hit G to move it. And then right here in the mix shader, plug that into the surface. So now we have this. So now what I'm going to do is play with these on the mortar size and make it really, really small. So the size right over here is much smaller than the ones here. And then I'm also going to take the brightness down as well on these. See, make sure this is selected. I'm going to take the brightness down so that it's also not quite as bright, so the focal point is on the ones in the middle. Now, we have these 2 things here. What we're going to do is we're going to just hit B for box select and just highlight the planes. I'm going to hit M and add them to a new collection and title it whatever you want. I'm going to keep it at collection 2. Now, we're going to extend this so it will be a seamless animation loop. So Shift A, collection instance, new collection. Now we're going to hit Control so it snaps to the grid, and we're just going to snap into the very edge of our scene. And that's all you have to do is just duplicate it however many times you like. Now make it quite a few loops so that whenever the camera is animating, you can't tell where the scene actually stops. Just by hitting Shift D to duplicate, holding down Control, and snapping it to the grid. So now we have this really cool scene. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take my camera and animate it. So I'm going to give it 120 frames right down here, and it's a 24 frames a second by default, so this will be a 5-second animation. So right here, make sure you have your camera selected. Right here on 8, hit the little keyframe icon, go to the very end. Now hit the right arrow to skip a frame, because if you don't do that, this frame and the very first frame are going to be the same thing, and there'll be a 1-frame pause, and that looks bad. Skip that by hitting the right arrow. Now we're just going to hit -8, and you can see nothing happened. That's because we went to the very edge of the plane, and it basically, because it's duplicated, you can't tell that we duplicated it. Now hit that keyframe, and then now we'll press play. And we have this really, really cool animation. So now all you have to do, of course, this currently doesn't look like the one I made. It's exactly, I had some other settings going on, and all I did was I went into the brick texture, and I changed up some stuff however I liked. So you can actually go into the color ramp here and minimize the amount of big bricks happening. And then you can play with the scale right here, maybe give it a few more, and then you can play with the color ramp to add some more red. And then, yeah, you can play with all these settings and see what you like, see how you like what you want it to look like. It's really infinite possibilities on how you can make this look, and having a lot of fun and doing some really cool stuff with your animation. And yeah, that's how you do this. Super simple. Let me show you how to export it really quickly. What you need to do is go to this little printer icon over here. Click right here where you want to save it. In the output, change from PNG to FFmpeg video. On encoding, change it to MP4. And then right down here, change it from medium quality to perceptually lossless. And then all you have to do next is hit render, render animation, and you're done. So if you followed the tutorial correctly, went in and played around with some settings and made it look as cool as possible, you'll get something like this. There's a little bit of animation in here, as you can see. So the last thing I forgot to show you guys was, if you look here on the shading on the Vorno texture, you'll see a W. So I'll just clear those keyframes. So if you look at the W, it animates like that. So all you have to do is just animate the W, and you get some really cool animations. Forgot to mention that. So there you go. Thank you guys for watching, and hope I'll see you in another tutorial.